This is what's called a rational equation, meaning you have rational polynomials on both sides here. Rational just means in fraction form. So if I were to, there's two things you have to think about. If it's just a fraction over a fraction, you can literally do cross multiplication, okay? So if I were to have something like 1 over, that's not a great color. That's never going to see that. 1 over 2 equals x over 5. 2x equals 5, right? I mean, then I just divide, get 5 halves, right? Just cross multiplication. So if you have a fraction equal to a fraction, it's very simple. If, however, you have a fraction plus a fraction equals a fraction, then you're not going to be able to do cross multiplication, all right? So let's say I had something like 1/2 plus x over 3 equals 2 over, let's say, 7, okay? Oh, that's ugly. We won't do that. Let's say 2 over something that, we'll say 2 over 3. That way we can just do a common denominator here. 2 over 3. Okay. I can't do cross multiplication here. What I have to do is I actually have to go through and say, what's the common denominator between these? 2, 3, and 3. Well, that's going to be 6, right? And so I can multiply everything by 6. So what happens here is I multiply everything by 6. What cancels here? The first one. 6 over 1 times 1/2. 2 and 6 cancels, right? What about here?
6 and 3.
Right? And then what happens here?
6 and 3.
So I'm left with 3 plus 2x equals 4. All of a sudden I have an easier equation to solve. I just got rid of all my fractions, okay? And so that's the concept here. Multiplying everything by the common denominator, right? You get rid of everything that happens. And in this case, if I multiplied everything, if I did cross multiplication, it would still work, but I would have a lot of more simplifying to do. So the first thing you're going to do here is you're going to say, what is my common denominator? Well, in order to find that, I have to factor. Factor out of 2, right? This is a special case on the right-hand side, x squared minus 1. How does that factor?
X plus 1, x minus 1.
Okay. So my common denominator here, is going to be 2 times x minus 1 times x plus 1. Does everybody see that? 2 times x minus 1 times x plus 1. Finding the common denominator is not all that difficult. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this particular thing right here, and I'm going to multiply it by my common denominator. So I'm going to say 2 x minus 1 x plus 1 and 2 x minus 1 x plus 1. All right. Now, it's easier to see if you have the denominator factored. So if I have this factored, it's easier, okay? So just go ahead and factor so that you can just ignore this part right here and just look at the factoring. Okay. So when I multiply this first group then by my common denominator, what's going to cancel here? My 2 is going to cancel. Everybody see that, right? And my x minus 1 is going to cancel, right? I have no denominator now. I just have 5x plus 1. Correct? On the right-hand side, what's going to cancel?
X plus 1, x minus 1.
Right, both of these. I have no denominator. I just have 15 times 2. Or you can distribute. It's the same concept, but divide by 5. I get x plus 1 equals 6, so x is going to equal 5. Now, I do need to check these for extraneous solutions, this favorite concept there. What is an extraneous solution? So basically in these equations, an extraneous solution will be one that causes a 0 in the denominator. For example, had I gotten x equals 1, that would be an extraneous solution, right? Because 1 is going to cause a problem. It's going to cause a 0 in my original problem. However, 5 does not cause a problem. If I plug a 5 back in, no issues, no problems, we are good to go, all right? Now, let's say you do not like common denominator and you have one like this, because there are going to be ones that you have to do a common denominator for. I could have done cross multiplication. So I could have said 5, and I'll do it over here somewhere, 5 times x squared minus 1 equals 15 times 2x minus 2. You can do that if you have fraction over fraction, okay? You can do that if you have fraction over fraction. But we're going to move to some problems where you need to do it the other way, and so you kind of have to know both directions of doing it. So go ahead and try check understanding 1, A and B. Check your solution. Just to walk you through this, this is cross multiplication. If it is fraction equals fractions, you can do it this way as well. 5 times the x squared minus 1 equals 15 times the 2x minus 2. Distribute, get it to one side. You will have to do factoring here. So you will have to factor out a 5 and then factors of 5 that add up to 6. You'll notice I got a 5 and a 1 when I did it this way. All right. And the 1 does not work. If I plug a 1 back in, it's extraneous, so your answer is just 5. Either way is fine to do it, whichever way you want to do it. You can cross multiply or you can multiply by the common denominator. For this one, we have 3 fractions. We cannot do cross multiplication. We have to figure out what the common denominator is, all right? And so we're going to look at the common denominator. We have a 2x, a 5x, and a 2. Of my variables, what is in common? What's the least common of my variables? The x. And of my numbers, Murphy, then, 2 and 5, what's my least common multiple there? 10. So my common denominator here is going to be 10x. And so when I have something like this, this is where you want to get rid of your fractions by multiplying everything by your common denominator. So I'm going to multiply this first one by 10x, and that's 10x in the numerator, right? Multiply this by 10x, and I'm going to multiply this by 10x. All right? This first one, what cancels?
10.
The 10 and the 2, right? And then what about my x's? They cancel as well, right? What about this next one? 5 and 10 cancels, and my x's cancel, right? What about this? The 2 and the 10 will cancel. So I have 5 times 1, which is 5, minus 2 times 2, which is 4, equals 5 times x times 1, which is 5x. This is rather simple. 5 minus 4 is 1. My last step here is to divide by 5. X equals 1/5. 1/5 does not cause a problem if I plug it in, right? 1/5 doesn't cause a problem in any of my denominators. 1/5, 1/5. Obviously, 1/5 doesn't affect that one. So my final answer here is x equals 1/5. All right, questions on that? All right, so my common denominator here is my x and my x plus 1. Those are not in common, so I just multiply them. It's like if you have a denominator of 2 and 3. 2 times 3 is your denominator, right? And then I multiplied everything by my common denominator, canceled out what I had in common. I'm left with 4x plus 1, which is 4x plus 4, minus 3 times x, which is 3x. When you scoot everything over to one side, you get this, which gives you 2 and negative 2.